Pau, do you want to say what we're going to be discussing today?
Yes, well, hi, I'm Paul. I'm a PhD student from the City Science Lab, Gipuzkoa. Some of you have been, we already know each other. Some of you don't. Some of you have been, we are already met in person because I've been like in, I mean, I'm right now in Gipuzkoa, but I was like some months ago in the Media Lab at the City Science in Boston. So today I'm going to present like the tool that we are being working, we are being developing. It's very related with the Kendall model that was built like some years ago, if I'm not wrong.
Mhm.
I'm gonna share the screen because I think the yeah. I'm right now using the my phone because I don't know why, but today I had like a very bad connection with my internet, so I'm using right now my my iPhone as a modem.
No
But
worries.
anyway, I'm if something's can you see the screen of the
Yes.
keynote? Yep.
Yes.
Okay, great. So today presentation is going to be like it's about mobility. It's passenger mobility, but at the end it's how we can decarbonize our cities, our regions, and how we can link policy to mobility emission reduction. No? So as I said, my name is Pau. Well, my name is Juan Pau Gutierrez Pascual. I'm a PhD student at City Science Lab Guipúzcoa, and I was like a visiting student at the Media Lab this semester. So basically, right now we have like the main problem of mobility is that nowadays uh, we are failing our climate goals. Is something that we are reading more and more and more in many newspapers. What we are starting here is that we are what we can see is that many of our in our city science network or when we compare different fields, transport takes like from a quarter of the emissions to even half of the emissions across all the sectors. So it's really important in our labs, right? So the challenge here is that at the end, passenger transport is a really contributor from the greenhouse gas emissions, and obviously interacts deeply with many sectors and also like economic sectors. But the project core here is like how we can define like a rigorous method and how we can locate the carbon budget for passenger mobility up to 2050 using a bottom-up approach that can be obviously transfer and scale across different nodes of the City Science Lab, City Science Network. So what we did, we basically we take into account and we consider that at the end the world has a carbon countdown, like this famous movie, no? And we want to measure how far we are from the carbon budget, not only for the entire world, but localized and allocated to a small region of the world. But like you can do it for a city or a country. So this is what we did in Gipuzkoa. We calculate the Gipuzkoa's decarbonization potential for mobility. So basically, we end up like calculating like possible scenarios. This is this this can be like the whole picture, but how we did that? Well, basically, we build like this system, this framework that at the end it compares like how much are we allowed to emit versus how much do we emit, no? So for to start, we what we did at the beginning was like from the global budget that was established by the Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change. We know in 2020 the carbon budget that we remain for achieving the 1.5 degrees up to 2 degrees. For each of one, they calculated like the overall emissions that the world can emit until overpassing those targets. And in order to allocate this overall global remaining carbon budget, the allocation that we follow was we did like a national allocation. In this case, we allocated to Spain, and also we did like a regional allocation. As you know, Guipúzcoa is one of the sub-region of Spain, and inside Guipúzcoa, we did another allocation, which is like inside the transport field. And at the end, we allocate this big budget to the passenger allocation budget. No, so at the end we end up like having like this budget for each habitant of the region up to 2050. So you can say like so from the global budget we allocated to this final budget inside the passenger transport. But this is not only that. There are many ways to allocate the budget. We can find like the grandfathering per capita and equal cumulative per capita. Just to simplify things, today as the Kendall model, we are going to do a per capita method. But there are many ways to allocate this global budget to your region or your city or your country. And depending on the allocation method you choose, you will end up with one budget, or even you can end up like a negative budget because, for example, it can take into account the historical emission for the country or for the region that you are studying. So going back to the overall system, now that we know the local mobility budget, we have to study how much we emit right now. So for this part, we are taking into account the entire life cycle of mobility of transport. So from extraction to manufacturing to transport and the use of the car and the transport methods, and also when you are disposing your vehicle or the bus that you're using. But not only that, we are taking into account the technologies that each vehicle are using, from the extraction to the transformation of the fuel to distribution of the fuel and up to the tank of the vehicle. No? And this is not only for oil or gasoline or diesel cars, but also for electric cars. And this is what in the mobility field is called from well to wheel. And so with that taken into account, we can have like a great picture of uh, of the entire life cycle of mobility, of the methods that we use for moving around cities and regions, not only for private vehicles but also for public transit. And as I said, you can measure the whole life cycle for gas, diesels, electric vehicles, and hybrid vehicles. So this is something that is already calculated. It's calculated by the International Transport Forum, which, to be honest, is they calculated really, really well. But at the end, it's like a really huge Excel that you can find online. And one of the first things that we did here was passing this gigantic and scary Excel to a platform. And this platform is already on GitHub. This is one of the first things that we did. Why we did this? Well, basically because you can take and you can measure each vehicle and each technology. You can see and calculate like as I said, like the well-to-wheel emissions for each transport mode. And also you can see here. I put it on the same GitHub, like a platform that you can play around your grid in your country or region, and you can assess each transport mode, and you can use it for build your own projects. That I think that gives you a lot of value for mobility projects. Uh, that that's why we're here. So, for example, with that, you can see like the real life cycle assessment for example, for electric vehicles or hybrid vehicles. Now, if you are taking into account the Norway grid, they have like a really green and low carbon emission for uh, each kilowatt hour that they generate. That, for example, they are with like more or less like 56 grams per kilometer, uh, versus in China that they have like a more, they emit more per kilowatt hour, and they end up like having like three times, well, a little bit like three times more emissions per kilometer, even in in what they call like green vehicles, no, like battery electric vehicles. So what once we
Maybe,
have,
Pau, so if
yeah.
I can interrupt here, like very quickly, just so that people understand, like sometimes maybe like even if the focus of your project is not on mobility, like on sustainability or emissions, sometimes it might be useful to have like this way to quickly quantify the emissions. If you have like the types of vehicles that are being used and the kilometers that are being driven by each mode, which is usually like easy-ish to get. With this, you have like the right factors to multiply and be able to do like a first estimation of emissions. So those values are sometimes difficult to find like for full life cycle. And especially then they are like difficult to customize to your own country because like you need to adapt the grid. Like Pau is going to explain like the broader project, but this part of the project alone might be interesting for some people.
Hmm.
Sorry, Pau, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, yes. Now going back, um, so basically, you can build, you can, as Nora said, now you can use it not only for passenger mobility, but also like for more other ways. And how this project is built is around like the inputs that you are um, giving to the system is like basically like really easy inputs that you can put and play, plug and play the overall system. For example, you can use the population, the per capita passenger kilometers, the modal share for in each city, and also like the current grid of your scenario or your country or region or city. And with that you can calculate like the overall emissions for the first year but also to 2050. So yeah, the how we modulate the scenarios, we use the well-known avoid, shift and improve framework that was proposed and used in the IPCC in the chapter 10 of transport. And what they basically said is they focus on the efficiency, and they focus on the system efficiency, the trip efficiency, and the vehicle efficiency. What I'm when I'm talking about this efficiency, and it's like reducing the needs to to travel by motorized means, to use like more environmental friendly modes, and also last but not least like using like more efficient vehicles, like for example like electric vehicles or whatever. So we modulate this using these like five levers um, that was that we take into account this framework, and we modulate then with these ranges, with these ranges per year, from 0% per year to 6% per year in avoid, in shift, and also, for example, in improve, we use like from 0 to 100% of electric vehicles. And also we take into account the embodied emission reductions and three different grid scenarios, from steps, which is more or less like what we are emitting right now in each country, to announced pledges, up to net zero. So basically what we did is like the users can interact with the tool, modulating the missions and the scenarios, and they can see if they surpass the local mobility budget with each of the scenario that they select, or if they play a little bit and they assess a different scenario, they can see if they surpass the local mobility budget or if they emit or if they accomplish the budget. So in the big picture, we end up developing this platform with the system presented today. And here you can see like each of the scenarios for each of the possible percentage of each level based on the avoid, shift, and improve framework. And this is like this is the Gipuzkoa case for each of the for all this scenario calculated. And as you can see, like not all of the scenarios meet the target, and only like the more let's call it like I don't know how to say, but like the more level you activate, the more easily you're gonna meet the target. But at the end, the target are really they are very far away to the business as usual scenario. So at the end, it was like this is something that was obviously built based on the Kendall model, but we translated to the passenger mobility using this overall worldwide budget, and you can use it across all the networks. And this is what we want to show you. So basically, we build this system in order that you, as another city science lab across the world, you can put your local data. You can fill an Excel file like this, for example. You can put your ID in your lab, and it takes like 2 hours or something like that to search all the numbers and everything, and you can generate like the possible scenarios, and at the end is like really it's really easy to use it because we prepared it in order to plug and play the system, and you can have like this kind of this results. This is, for example, the Boston results that we computed, and with these two notebooks that are in the GitHub, you can generate like platforms like that like the one that we presented today in a really easy and fast way. So this is more or less everything that I wanted to show today. I have an hand-on example that I want to show you right now. But at the end, the summary outcomes of this project are two. The first one is the life cycle platform that was transferred from the IDF, and the second one is the second project is the last one of the transport budget scenarios that you can use it in your own lab. And if you want to learn more or like to have it in your lab, we are really happy to share this knowledge and like be with you with this development, because I think it's a an interesting project that we can be everybody involved. So if you have any questions or something that
Mhm.
interests you, let us know, because we are really happy to work with you. So
Thanks.
yeah,
So I think like you also had like then like separately, right? Like you'll be running us through the tutorial, right? But maybe
yeah,
this was more like the presentation of the project per se. But I don't know if people have questions at this point before
yeah.
we walk through kind of like how to execute it for your lab and seeing kind of like the example codes that Pau has prepared. Does anyone have like any comments, questions, anything that is unclear? Otherwise, we can do the Q&A at the end. Does that sound
Yeah.
good?
So basically, we are going to do this hands-on. At the end, it's like two simple notebooks that it starts with this mobility Excel that if you fill the Excel, it's very easy to fill it for your lab, and you put it like here, the lab ID, and you download you clone the repository, you fill the Excel file, and you execute it. I mean, it takes like not even like a minute, but basically you put here your live ID, the base year, and at the end it generates you like a scenario master toolkit file, which is in a .parquet file, and yeah, I think it's already
So, Pau, maybe
generated.
can you quickly explain the types of data that people need to find? In
Yeah,
general, like, we don't need to review all of them, but so that people understand what type of data they should be able to find
yeah.
for their studies.
So the data that you have to file is a population in your city or your region, your model split, the fleet technology, and the fleet overall vehicles that are right now in the country, or the lab, or whatever, the where it came from, because it's always good to have this reference or the sources, and also like the vehicle kilometer travel and the occupancy. If you found it, you can go and use some statistics if you don't find it. But if normally some cities, regions, or countries, they have this kind of data, and
Mhm.
more or less what you need to execute this system is the population, the per capita passenger kilometer, the mode share of the last year, for example, and also like your vehicle fleet. That's it.
Mhm. Mhm.
and
So
and
that's
also
Mhm.
the grid of your city, which is it's really easy I mean, you can Google it and you will find it.
For many cities, not all,
Well,
but yeah, just to clarify, like the modal share is, for example, like 1% of people commute or 1% of the trip are by bike, 20% are by public transport. That's what modal share is. So that's one of the data sets that you need, and then you need to know like out of like the cars, like 20% are electric, and 80% are combustion, for example. So those are like the types of data points that you need for your city.
yeah. Yes, basically you can, and once you have it, you can execute these two notebooks. The first notebook, at the end, it generates the overall data set scenario. So it takes like almost like a half minute, something like that. What here, this is where you change the lab. So normally if you put like GIP as a Gipuzkoa, or BOS as a Boston, or whatever, and you run all the scripts, at the end what it's going to generate, it's going to be like a .parquet file. And yeah, I think it's executed fine. So yeah, as I said, no, it's gonna generate you this Parquet file. So if you go and run this second script, you can visualize the result. Uh, so there you go. So yeah. So for example, for the Gipuzkoa case, you can generate all these scenario dot plots, and with that you can use all this information and the data set to build a platform like the one that I show you in the video, that you can play around, and you can assess the which scenario meet the target and the criteria, or like if you want to assess some other possible scenarios and how far you are from the target of your region for passenger mobility. You can easily access it and play around, and see how far or near you are from the target, or what are the changes that you need to surpass the target in the future. So I don't know if anyone has some question around like the presentation, the model, or like some questions. But yeah, that's all that I have from my side. And yeah, so thank you to be here today to listen me. And maybe I'm if I'm lacking something, or something is missing, or something, we can stay in touch. We can share. I can send an email or something, uh, if you have inquiries, questions, and you want to clarify something. But well, that's all. So thank you.
Thank you, Pau. This has been really nice to see. I'm wondering like if people have questions like either like about the project in general, the approach, how to use it, anything along those lines. Does anyone have any questions in mind?
Yes, maybe I have a question. For the population, so we have to provide the population for the future and for the current one.
You have to
Yes.
the data that you have to prepare is the current one. The data you have normally, now we are in 2026. Normally, you find the information of the last year of 2025, and the only data that you need for the future is the grid scenario. So the grid scenario means like normally we here in Gipuzkoa we have, well, here and in Europe and in many other many other regions, you can find like the net zero um, uh, scenario for each city, the announced pledges, and also the steps. So this information goes into the Excel file, and with if you put it, it's plug and play. So you put in the Excel, you run all the both of the scripts, and you have the data.
But I think the question, Paul, like also like in particular, I know that you have been considering that's like something that you were thinking about at some point, like for like that's something that is modifiable, right, Paul? Like you can consider that the population is going to be constant or that it is
Yeah.
going to be increased. So that's something that you can include in the model. But I don't know if in this version of the Excel, if it's kind of like outside the model, right? I think like in this version, it's still like inside
Yeah.
the script, but it's doable. That's something that we can take out. It's like a trade-off kind of how much like you assume and you keep inside the model and how much you ask people to fill out, but that's a parameter for sure.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Questions?
I have just a quick question. Sorry, I missed the beginning of the talk. But is there a limit on the mode choices? Like, you can't pick a bike to go very far, for example. Is there a way to like represent the limits of a mode if it's not like a viable solution?
Yes, there is inside the notebook one when we define the shift lever, there are like some limits for each mode that because at the end what I found a paper that it declares you like how far each mode normally people takes. So there are some it's delimited for each mode of vehicle. So you can modify it if you, for example, if you are
Okay.
in a region that is really flat, and you can, for example, if you are in Netherlands and you assume that a person in Netherlands can goes further in bike than a person here in Spain or in the US, for example, you can modify that in order to like tune this model for
Gotcha.
that specific case. But yeah, we considered like these options, but I didn't want to go into detail for this presentation because it gets like a really complicated to understand when we explain like everything. So, but yeah,
No, that's great. That answers my question. Thank you.
thank you.
And I do think like that's something that we have seen around this type of models. Like at the end of the day, you have a lever that is mode shift, right? But we know in the group that mode shift, like it's not something that is like actionable for the government.
Right.
So that's something like that you could either do if you have data with choice modeling. So for example, that's something that Inigo has done in the past, or that Ivan is working on now. I know like Ariel, Arnaud, like you've all done some choice modeling, right? So that's like a way to link kind of like interventions where with then kind of like that mode shift that happens, but in a way like that mode shift is an output. And now we also have Pablo, who's also in the call, doing kind of like a version of that that doesn't require choice modeling, so more like with system dynamics, so that you can do this type of modeling or that type of link for areas that have less data. So I don't know, Pablo, actually, if you want to say a word about that, because Pablo's thesis links with PAUS. So maybe if people are interested to learn a little bit more about that.
Yes, hello. Yes, so as Naruto said, what I'm doing is identifying which policies local authorities can actionate to modify the levers that Pau has just said. So right now I'm working on building a model that can link those policies, more tangible policies, with this indicator, this lever. So right now I'm doing this model about the electric vehicle share, and we are thinking about expanding into the model shift and the demand cut, and also a future outcome is to also model the different types of models such as housing, amenities, etc.
So we've been talking actually to the people who developed the net zero platform, which is kind of the decarbonization tool that the EU has been using. So we talked to the people who have done the models behind that. And they shared with us also that actually like when cities do like their climate budgeting and their commitments to what they are going to change, they had overestimated what they could do in terms of transport. They said like, yes, I'm going to reduce emissions of transport by 80%, right? And I'm going to invest X amount in public transit. The truth is that in doing that, they didn't have like a link between how much you spend in public transit, for example, and then how much more people use public transit. Like those models are not simple. So they are kind of like, at least like cities in the European Union, they are quite on track on decarbonizing most of the sectors, but not transportation. So they were very interested kind of like in learning more about this approach that kind of like gives you like that kind of like the truth is that you need to bring like levers down to something that is more actionable for governments, right? Like if I extend bike lanes or if I give like a subsidy of 10,000 euros for electric vehicles, then how many people, how much is the electric vehicle share going to increase and stuff like that. So those are all like things that kind of like, so PAUS tool allows you to compare kind of like if I, like electrifying or demand reduction is more important. So very along the lines of the Kendall model, as he said. And then with this other project, we are trying to kind of like bring it like a step closer to decision making, if that makes sense. So still a lot of work happening in this space. And I don't know, Inigo, like I was thinking that at some point we might have like a choice modeling session, but I was wondering, Inigo, if you wanted to tell us kind of like so that people understand like the two approaches. Like one is like much more like high level with system dynamics, but do you mind explaining a little bit of how kind of like this link happens with choice modeling?
Yeah. Of course, at the end, I don't know if everyone knows about choice modeling. Probably yes, but is trying to predict how we are going to respond to certain interventions based on some models, based on some data. No, so taking a pause project here, what let me think how I would frame it. I think that it depends a lot on local data. No, would you need to take data from I don't know if it's mobility surveys from we have mobility surveys from Donosti, from San Sebastian, from Guipúzcoa, but you need to get mobility surveys or either telecommunication data from your local city science labs to create these models that would help us or would help you to predict how people is responding to many interventions. No, in this case, mobility interventions can be referred to as improvements on public transit systems, change on the built environment so that destinations are closer or farther. Even some more straightforward as the ones Pau mentioned, no? Avoiding some trips, but these ones are pretty straightforward, or creating co-working spaces so that you have to go closer, so the public transit system changes, and you might want to take the public transport because your working space now is closer, no? Yeah.
So in a way, there is like in the past, we had done more of like this type of model that links kind of like interventions with some KPI, but I think like then like all of these models can connect to something like what Pau has done, where then you see kind of like the importance and the priorities among different projects. So that's kind of like how we're thinking about that. I also know that some people like for Asia, you know, for you, Agno, but I'm also thinking about Taipei and Shanghai. It's a little bit late, so I'm sure they might have questions offline and reach out to you directly, Pau. So let's I don't know, let's give like a couple of more minutes just in case anyone else has questions. Giuseppe, Xavi, anyone has any curiosities?
I have one really simple question.
Mm-hmm.
The lever APC for the decarbonizing of the grid, what does APC stand for?
Announce pledges.
Wait, what?
I think is announce pledges scenarios.
So that's basically the utility. How much carbon in per kilowatt or some metric like that?
Yeah.
Okay, I got you.
No, well, this is like the International Energy Agency. Normally, they take into account like these three possible scenarios in the future: the net zero, the APS, the announced pledges scenarios, and also what is called STEPS, which is like more or less like what is the trend right now.
Mm-hmm. But that
So,
updates every year, or does that like how do you update your model as the utility decarbonizes more?
yeah, no, it's like it takes into account like each year. So each year is like, so you have like your grid. For example, for the USA's, I mean, you can find
Yep.
it like in the reports or whatever, and you can put it in the so you put it in the Excel. So it takes into
I
account
gotcha.
like
So you
all,
update it per your locale. Gotcha.
yeah.
Okay.
And for
Okay.
each location, there is like a different, say, like curve of like over the years, if it's like flat, increases or decreases.
Yeah.
And those scenarios are kind of like agreed upon and kind of like standardized in the international community. So these
How
are
that
like
value is reported.
but also like the trajectory.
Ah,
Like the
okay.
entire trajectory, like that's like common, so that everyone that is doing kind of like modeling in this space uses like the same assumptions.
Okay. I see.
So then you can customize everything, right? But this is kind of like a way of communicating kind of like big picture scenarios. So it's like, say, like, I don't know, like you hear very often like decrease in emissions 80% compared to I don't know, I think it's like a 2005 baseline. So that's, for example, like a common kind of like standard, like way of modeling, right? So it's like those type of assumptions.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. For example, this narrow what you said is like when some nations they establish like this as their allocation method, as their target, like meeting the 80% of what we emitted in the 2005, for example, is the grandfathering allocation method. That's another allocation method. So how, like, depending on how you allocate the budget, it's gonna give you like the bar is gonna be higher or lower depending on the allocation method, which is a really that's really political. That's yeah.
Yeah, I got it.
That's what they negotiate each year in the COP or on the World Economic Forum and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yep, I gotcha.
And guess what? Like we didn't choose the one that makes it harder for the global north. So there is like there's like very different approaches. And the truth is that it's also like in the maybe like most fair approaches. That is like if you emitted more in the past, now you can emit less. Right? In those like many countries, like for example, the US, you would not be allowed to emit like any carbon at all. Like you would have like negative budget.
Yeah.
Which is also like not necessarily like the right narrative in the sense that if you have like a target that is like too hard to achieve, like that's also like
Yeah.
So there is like all of those considerations, like geopolitics, but also like you need to have like a goal that feels achievable in some sense so that people actually work towards it. And so there's like all of those considerations. We are actually thinking that for the summit that we are hosting in San Sebastian this fall, this might be one of the workshops that we do. So we would ideally like to have like data from the different labs so that we have like this type of platform for the different locations in the network. And then you could see like maybe in some locations, like electrifying vehicles has like a ton of impact. And in others, you need to prioritize something else. So kind of like to have that. And it's also not about like the global priority, which is also important, but like, I don't know, like you can have like set specific targets. Like if you want to be like below this threshold of like 1.5 degrees, you need to minimum like electrify, I don't know, like 80% of your fleet by 2050 and stuff like that. So that's something that we're thinking of doing for the summit. So we might reach out to everyone so that we can have that working for each lab.
Yeah, I think also one of the challenges with this, like with this future, not challenges, but like things to consider is that this is purely for passenger mobility, or are you considering also like freight?
Passenger.
Yeah, actually, I mean, the project is for passenger mobility, but you can use the same framework and put it for freight transport.
Yeah, but it becomes much harder, right? Because mode choice is not is a very costly piece of that equation. But I think
Yeah.
it's really interesting. Like it's an interesting problem of how you could use it for freight.
Yeah, and it's a little bit less actionable for governments as well. Like the freight, like how that happens. Like there is like fewer levers that the government has to act upon.
Yeah. I mean, they can incentivize it.
Exactly, to some extent. But it becomes a little bit more difficult, especially if we are thinking about kind of like in general, like cities or local governments. That's something a little bit more like you need like a little, at least like a nation to be able to make like a significant switch in that. But yeah, that's of course like an important part of the mission.
Equation. No, very cool.
Yeah, that's been very nice, Pau. And I know that the notebooks are like kind of like well documented, so there is like much more detail in those. So if anyone wants to nerd out a little bit, there's a lot of detail to it.
Yeah, the idea is that on late June, this like at the end of this month, we are gonna update it on our city science lab in Gipuzkoa, GitHub, and you can find it there. In the meantime, if someone is interested in the project, you can find it in my own GitHub, but it's gonna be updated in the city science lab Gipuzkoa soon.
Great.
So I'll be sharing both like the video with explanation and Pau's like GitHubs and the notebooks by email later today. And also like Marcus area, like I don't know, like if you feel that there is like other labs that are like interested that come to your mind, like feel free to forward it to them as well.
Or some ideas or like next steps. I'm always like open to hear like new and fresh ideas. So it's always good to hear from you.
Actually, I have some. I don't know if. Well, first of all, congrats for the tools and the talk. I have. It's not a question, or it's just to see how we can somehow make the link with the workshop number 1 that was more about assessing the network quality, right? How some link can be done with comparing the impact of a given public transport network on the CO2 emission. I'm saying this because this is actually what we are trying to do in some Asian city. I guess there is a big impact, but like trying to make the bridge between more like the on top of the passenger choice, but the cost of the infrastructure and how your public transport network, whether it's how it's built, what kind of material you use to build it, then some people will reduce their usage of car and stuff like that. I have no answer of my question, but it's just to try to make the link. I don't know exactly what are the next step for this workshop about mobility, but as it's two approach developed by Spanish, not in the same city, but with the same. And it goes also with the workshop number 2, which was, if I remember well, very related to this H3 grid. So, yeah, maybe to see how to spatialize a bit your tool, like feeding with some spatial files, like a network, for instance, and see how it impacts. Because here, what you present is more like global scenario, right? You reduce a certain amount, but it could be nice to explore also with some change that are more specialized change. But it's not something that can be done in a short term. It's more like long-term ideas just to make the link with the different workshop.
There is for sure that link. I think like the closest that we will get like in the scope of this project will be like in Pablo's work. So as I said, like that, for example, for that you're proposing, Agno, like that's exactly what we like. It's like that's something that a government can do. And Pau's model is like, oh, like how many people would switch? But your question, as you were saying, is like, okay, but how does like the government's specific action of like adding a bus line here then affect that? So usually that's done with choice modeling. So either you have data and you can do something like what Inigo was explaining, or what we're proposing is that maybe with fewer data and you can do something more like a systems modeling, a system dynamics modeling, which is what Pablo is working on. So he has started with a section on kind of like electrifying vehicles, but that's part of kind of like what will happen throughout this summer. So I'm thinking maybe like that can be kind of like maybe like I'm thinking like August is not a good time for hosting a meeting, but maybe we can do that in September, and then maybe I think like Pablo will have progress. because it
Mhm.
has like that step of like linking. And I think like it can work in environments. It's approximate, it's not perfect because those, I mean, it's difficult to do without choice modeling. So
Mhm.
it's still an approximation, but it gives you like kind of like that quantity and it looks at the overall system. So yeah, that can be like a potential next step. But if your project timeline is tighter, Arnaud, and you end up doing something, we'd also be happy to hear about the approach that you end up taking. Do you have local data on like observed behavior tracking?
But right now we are more on the network itself and trying to assess. So we just had a meeting with Miguel actually this afternoon because we are using his accessibility map, but it's very focusing on the network itself. Then we are trying to see how this network can impact on the choice model, but it's still in process.
Yeah, it's challenging. Like you can also
With
like
yeah. But maybe Elisa and Enigo at some point you should discuss about your utility model.
yeah.
Sure.
Because
Yeah, yeah, yeah.